This is Dr. Mariah White, host of Your Life Matters. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Rachel Mullins, host of #NoFilterFriday here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my new show, #NoFilterFriday, where we talk about all of the sexual misconduct allegations swirling around Hollywood. A new show drops every Friday at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of #NoFilterFriday. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're dirty, and you probably are too. So this week, with the release of Spider-Man Far From Home, of course, we were really excited to see it. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to see it because of some technical difficulties, but Lindsay and Aurelia both got to see it, and so Lindsay and I are here today to talk about it. And we also have a very special guest here today to talk about our Geek on Fleek topic. So, Lindsay, can we get an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So this week with Geek on Fleek, I'm going to talk, Aurelia's going to talk actually about our experience with the game of Harry Potter's Wizards Unite. So all of us have played, a lot of us have played Pokemon Go, where it's this geocaching thing where you can use the AR and you can see Pokemon in your environment and you can catch them with the balls. And so the Harry Potter franchise decided to go ahead and make their own thing. And, you know, Aurelia and I got in it pretty early. Actually, there was a moment where she was messaging me from her dad's house and she said, "Mom, I found a really cool game." And I messaged her back and I said, Wizards Unite? And she was like, "Yes, how did you know?" So at least I know I'm raising her right. And we spent probably 2 or 3 hours at the zoo recently, being those really obnoxious people who were staring at their phone trying to play that game. So I'm going to hand the headset over to her so she can talk about it a little bit.
All right.
So, with Wizards Unite, with Wizards Unite, you can go around and help the Ministry get back confoundables, which are magical artifacts or people/animals. When it'll show a little icon depending on what it is. Like there's a Hogwarts icon, a Dark Arts icon, which is green, and then the Hogwarts is red. There are many others too. With the zoologist one, there's a blue one. And then you can tap on the icon, and you can either choose AR or just no AR. And with AR, you have to search the ground for traces of magic. And once you have, and then you have to tap on it, and then you have to cast a spell in order to help whatever that thing is, like a Hogwarts student getting trapped in ice, or in these vines.
How do you cast a spell?
You have to trace, like, some figure.
Design, kind of?
Design, I guess. And then, usually once you begin, you can pick a ministry name. That is basically just a name that the Ministry calls you. Mine is Slotha, and my mom's is Laura Lynn, and we're friends on it, obviously.
Oh, you better be.
And then, I believe once you can begin, you can register your wand, and you can pick the wood you want it to be. So there's, like, pine,
cherry, oak,
elm,
elder.
There is elder on it. And you can also pick your core. There's unicorn hair, phoenix feather, and
something else. I don't know.
Else. I don't
Is
know.
it dragon heartstrings?
I, of course, picked unicorn hair.
Dragon heartstring.
Ah, there we go.
There we go. Thanks, Elizabeth. And then you can pick what length you want it to be, and then you tap a button on the bottom, and it says register, and then it shows you what your wand looks like, and then I believe you have to confirm that you want your wand to be that way.
So that it will register, yeah.
And then it will register, and that's your wand.
Oh,
You can also switch up your wand a couple times. I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as soon as you begin, you can also pick your house.
Yeah.
Oh, so you actually
pick it. It does not pick
don't...
you.
Oh, okay. That's really awesome.
Yeah. My mom is a Hufflepuff, and I am a Gryffindor. Not Gryffindor. Ravenclaw. I'm not Ravenclaw. And usually when you go to level 6, you can pick your occupation,
Profession.
Profession. There are 3 professions. Professor, or a magic zoologist. Magic zoologist...
Oh, and an aura.
A magic zoologist has extra damage against beasts, or has extra damage against dark and beasts. Professor is a little special. Extra damage against curiosities and dark forests, and you also cannot kill them.
Ooh,
Okay.
Cool.
You can't kill them, or something bad. I forgot. I think you get in trouble with the ministry or something.
Okay.
And that is basically all. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because I know with Pokemon Go, I know people were complaining about not being able to track the Pokemon really. Like you just had to see them as they popped up. So it's really cool to hear that they're kind of expanding on that and making it so that you can track the different things instead of just waiting for them to pop up.
Right. Yeah, you can see what's out there, and actually there have been several instances where Aurelia and I were actually trying to get the same thing, and I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there have been times where one of us has actually freed the confoundable, and the other person it dissipates on your phone. So it's real time for that too, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
And then if you lose spell energy, you can go to an inn.
Oh yeah, so you get just like you could spin the thing at a Pokestop to get more Pokeballs. You have to have spell energy in order to cast the spells. So you can go to an inn and trace this figure, and you get spell energy from that. There's greenhouses that give you certain things, and I haven't really figured out. Her and I are only both level 6, but you can also pick up things that you walk past, like potions and water plants or watering cans and stuff throughout where you're walking, and then
you can go to your suitcase and press on a button, and then you can brew a potion.
Yep.
Oh,
and
neat.
there's also big. Obviously, there were big places where you could go and have battles, like arenas on Pokemon Go, and Wizards Unite has something like that, but we really haven't figured out how to do it. So we're going to skip that part.
Well, it makes it sound even more interesting because I'd heard all the basic premise about it, and I'm and I wonder how much of it they basically just more or less copied and pasted from Pokemon Go and how much they actually expanded on it. But it sounds like they actually took some time to really integrate the concept into that world and expand on the game itself instead of just copying and pasting it.
Yeah. Well, and there also is a Harry Potter Wizards Unite.com website that shows you this 3-minute trailer, and it's really cute. It shows these people, using their phones, but imaginarily those transform into your wand, and seeing those confoundables in their lives and battling them. And then there's this guy sitting in in a truck, and he's got his headphones on, and he's obviously not playing. He's not part of that world.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's talk then. Let's get moving on to Spider-Man Far From Home. thank you, Aurelia, for talking about Geek on Fleek with me. And so Spider-Man Far From Home just came out, and it's funny because Endgame also is still in theaters because they did that re-release of some end scene extra credit stuff, which was, I of course did not go back and see it, so it'd be interesting to find out what it is. And then you said you had technical difficulties in the theater, so you really didn't get to watch very much because it was such garbly.
Yeah, like I do have like some hearing problems, not enough to like be, you know, like I need a hearing aid or like something like that, but like it does get very difficult sometimes for me to like make out words and what people are saying if there's even a little bit of feedback or a little bit of garbliness to it. And usually I'm fine in the theater because like the volume and everything is loud enough. It's usually fine. I might miss a little bit here or there, but I can still follow along. But with this time, it was just, I could not, like I tried really hard and I just could not understand it. I'm like, I need subtitles for this.
Right.
So like I watched like the very beginning up into the point where Peter did that little presentation with May, and then he went backstage with May, and like at that point I was like, I can't understand anything that they're saying. Right. I'm just getting too frustrated, and so I left.
Yeah, and that was pretty early in it too, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
But at this point, we do need to like do our spoiler alert. I don't know why anyone would be listening to this episode if they hadn't seen it yet or if they weren't okay with spoilers. And you are obviously okay with spoilers, but
very okay.
I'm not. So I'm glad that I got to see it. We actually went and saw it Tuesday night, and we were like 15, 20 minutes late for it. So we actually managed to walk right in when the Sony thing came across the front screen. So we like timed it perfectly. We didn't see any trailers, but we walked in like the last people in the theater. And there's a few things that I felt really interested about with Spider-Man. And it's hard because I'm not someone who can write down everything or even think everything about what I thought about it. Of course, I thought it was a good movie. I actually had to drag Aurelia because she's not really into the whole Spider-Man thing. She liked Avengers, she liked Endgame, she liked Infinity War. I've gotten her really into those, but this one was sort of like a flash date kind of night with her, and she actually really ended up enjoying it. I really like Tom Holland's portrayal of Peter Parker because he's much more 16-year-old, awkward, cute, high school boy.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see him be able to do that and to really want that for himself. And that was a really underlying theme with this movie, just that he wasn't ready to take on the Iron Man shoulders, to take that on his shoulders yet. So losing Tony is really a big part of it, a big part of the theme. And we get to see Happy and Aunt May are kind of like having a summer fling or something, something like that.
I had heard little rumblings about that, and I am a big multi-shipper, so like I kind of dig it. Yeah,
it's cute. It's really cute. At some point in time, at the very end of the movie, Peter Parker is like, so we need to talk about this. And Happy is like, yeah, we are dating. And Aunt May is like, no, it's kind of just a thing. Oh, so silly. Oh, my goodness. But, they're real good at tossing those little tidbits in for us. So I really enjoyed that. So let's go from the beginning. So obviously we've all watched the trailers, and we know that the MCU likes to mess with us and give us ideas about things that are going to happen. They end up being completely wrong in this one.
Of course.
So Jake Gyllenhaal is really a fantastic Mysterio. He's so great, and his character is very believable as this hero in another multiverse, right? Wrong. He does end up being not the good guy, so there's that.
Which I think like most comic fans kind of were thinking that already.
Yeah, I saw the speculation. Yep, definitely. And it was really interesting to me too, because I don't know anything about that. Like I read what people say and I get so confused because sure, I love Stan Lee. Sure, I love all of the aspects of all of that, but I really don't have time to read all the comics that I'd love to. So I really don't know much about Mysterio or the Elementals, but they do talk about that. So the idea is that he is basically from another multiverse, and he, in his universe, they destroyed his planet already. The Elementals destroyed his planet already. The fire one was the strongest, and that was the one that destroyed his family and his children, and there's this great story that goes along with it. It turns out to all be a big lie. He's actually... they go back to like scenes from Tony Stark doing presentations where he used to work for Tony, and he was fired for some reason, being unstable. So he gets fired, and then he's got a team of people who used to work for Tony who also were unstable. Not their hearts were clearly not in the right place. Like he talks about chronicling how they all got under his wing with what he's up to. So they have got this amazing tech, and they're like super geniuses, right? And they have created all of these projector drones to project these major elemental bad guys that are destroying the cities and stuff. And so obviously these drones have weapon tech, and they're able to synchronized destroy these European cities that Peter Parker is visiting with his family. Yeah. And, Nick Fury comes in and he's like, I need your help. And Peter Parker's like, you don't need me. Mysterio's got this down pat. And he has been gifted some really cool tech from Peter Parker. Peter Parker has been gifted some really cool tech from Tony. And he, doesn't like the responsibility. He doesn't like... He actually misuses the responsibility, and then he gives that tech to Mysterio.
Oh, because of course he's been tricked into thinking that Mysterio is a good guy. And it's devastating when he realizes what he did. A couple of cool things. Zendaya is in this. Aurelia did a little girly giggle when she saw her, because we've been seeing her on Disney for so long, and I love Zendaya so much.
I love Zendaya. She's so cute, and
she is so awesome.
Yeah, and she plays she's so talented, holy cannoli. But in this one, she's just MJ, and it's so fun to see a different MJ, because typically we're used to the redheaded. I don't know a whole lot about MJ, but
she's kind of bland to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So she's supposed to be this, I guess, girl next door kind of thing, which is fine. But girl next door doesn't necessarily mean boring, and to me, she's kind of boring.
Right. Well,
just personal opinion, but
Zendaya's portrayal is really cute. She, we obviously don't get very much time to talk about her backstory or anything, but we do know right off the bat, Spider-Man is Peter Parker's all into her. Wants to tell her how he feels while they're on the Eiffel Tower, just this super cheesy,
all that cliche
goofy
stuff.
Yeah, all the cliche stuff is just so the hormones running rampant. I just loved it. And he buys her this necklace while they're abroad, and he's ready to tell her how he feels, and he keeps getting thwarted by this other guy who and he has to keep running away because he has to keep answering calls from Nick Fury. So it's super irritating, because all he wants to do is be a high school kid. He just wants a vacation. He talks about he can't be Iron Man. He's just your typical, your neighborhood Spider-Man. And I did want to say one of my favorite quotes was when he comes in and he's talking covertly with Nick Fury and Mysterio, and he gets all excited when Mysterio is talking about his universe being destroyed, and Spider-Man is like, oh, so there is a multiverse, and he starts geeking out about it, and he gets he looks at everybody's faces, and it's the total geek moment, right? Everybody's looking at him what? And he says, oh, I'm sorry, it's just really cool. And Mysterio goes, don't ever apologize for being the smartest guy in the room. It was too cute. I was like, dude. But that also comes into play later when, his head gets really big and... So
obviously, since Zendaya and Ned are still the same age, obviously they were snapped away with Peter.
Yep. And they do talk about that. So they're calling it the blip, which is just silly. And the idea is that when everybody was snapped away, they did turn to dust, and then 5 years pass. And for the people that were snapped away, time sort of stood still. We heard that in Endgame, where Peter talks about how they were like just floating around, no time had passed, or maybe a little bit of time had passed or something. But then was it Doctor Strange who said, 5 years have passed, we've got to go back, they need our help. So they come back in, and when they come back in supposedly to the place where they had been snapped from. They have not aged, but everyone else obviously has aged 5 years now. Some of us age better than others, but there some. The idea, I guess, is that those kids who were able to stay, I don't know if like life stopped for them. Half of the world being blipped out. If your teacher's gone, then you need a new teacher. But I would assume the other kids are now graduated. So the kids, Ned, Zendaya, Peter, obviously the ones that are blipped, they do talk about how they had to go back to the start of the school year because and they were irritated about that. And I totally get it. Super super high school thing to be upset about. Not that all your friends are now 5 years older or anything like that, but to be upset that you had to go back to the start of the school year. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you and I were around that age, it was a little bit harder. It required a little bit more effort to keep in touch with people that weren't even in your same classes. But nowadays, they have social media, they have smartphones and everything. It's so it's probably not that much of a concern, I can just text them, or I can message them, or Snapchat them, or something, Yeah.
So in the MCU, it's now 2023, and there was a question addressed to Kevin Feige about how, what happens if you were blipped out of an airplane? You wouldn't be blipped back into that space and time where you'd be back on that airplane. The airplane wouldn't be there, So this is where I get kind of irritated because they sort of popped out of that when they said, "Oh no, they were blipped back into a safe place." Come on, what?
When you start playing around with these grand concepts like this, they can be fun, but there are so many little details that you have to think about, and it's if you don't actually give thought to them, then it becomes obviously sloppy.
And I feel the real fans, the people who think about these things too much, are the ones that think about these things too much. I don't really necessarily know that someone like my 12-year-old daughter would be so concerned, but I do feel the I don't want to say the real fan, but the person who would
the analytical
want to know how this it's important to get these things figured out, and when they're not figured out, they're eyesores. They're very, very apparent. So that was very interesting for them to go through, and they do actually travel to some nice places in Europe. It's devastating because these stupid drones are destroying these ancient buildings and beautiful architecture and stuff. And Mysterio's character even says they'll rebuild, or someone says, I think it is Mysterio that says, they'll rebuild, and it's well, seriously.
Quick question. I know one of the cities they were in was Paris. Did the Notre Dame theater get destroyed?
No, they don't go to Paris. They talk about going to Paris, but they don't go.
Okay, because I thought you said something about them on the Eiffel Tower and stuff.
Yeah, because they wanted to go, and that was the plan that was in their itinerary. And then Nick Fury gets all up in their business and starts upgrading the tour for the high schoolers so that they end up going into better hotels and to different cities because the upgrades send them to different places. So they end up in Prague. So we don't get to see Notre Dame at all.
I was just curious because, there was the fire earlier this year. I'm that would have been awfully strange because obviously they probably would have, filmed that before the fire happened.
Right.
And it would have been, this strange, almost pseudo-prophetic thing that happened.
Yeah, sort of surreal.
Yeah.
So, they keep upgrading the high school. And then that's what the funny part, too, is, Zendaya gets to see Peter Parker disappearing all the time. this other guy is like kind of moving in on her or trying to, and she's so not having it. So I was proud of her for that. But then, no one else thinks it's like super suspicious that this like these upgrades keep happening and Peter Parker keeps disappearing. And then there's these like rumors that he's an escort, like he's a male escort. And then there's this weird thing that happens with a camera phone where Peter Parker is found in the bathroom with his pants down with a woman. And I think it's that agent who's with Nick Fury.
Okay.
Like helping him put on something or giving him a suit or something. It was really random, but then later on they address that too, because he's like, how come nobody is even talking about Peter Parker being, this super shady escort type guy? And then Zendaya's like, well, how about we talk about how weird it is that you were taking pictures of him in the bathroom? Like, and then one of the teachers goes up to him and is like, yeah, just between you and me, knock that off. That's weird.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting little high school teenage tidbits in there that are really like funny and cute and interesting and just kept you kind of going. I read a review that said like it's an unpredictable teenage romance movie. And yeah, there are some things that are really unpredictable, but they're the typical MCU distraction, determined. What's the word that I'm looking for here? When they tell you one thing and you really are surprised to find out that it's projectors and not the multiverse. Like, come on. Why don't we go into Gaming Corner?
Yep, because I actually have a really interesting topic to talk about on Gaming Corner. So, one of the games that has kind of more or less, I would say, revolutionized the comic book video game is the Arkham series for Batman. Just with the level of storytelling, the upgrades that they put in the free flow combat system that has now been copied and pasted pretty much for like the Captain America video game and the Spiderman video game that came out last year, and like pretty much like, and even the Lord of the Rings game, Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor. One of the really interesting things about it, about the last Arkham game that came out called Arkham Knight, there was this mysterious character called the Arkham Knight, and he wore this, like, blue helmet and these fatigues, and, like, he just went by Arkham Knight, and nobody else knew, like, who he was, where he came from, what was going on with him. And before the game was released, there was a lot of speculation as to who it was, and there were, like, quite a few names bandied about. And, spoiler, obviously, for anybody who hasn't played the game, but it's Jason Todd, also known as the Red Hood, and this is how he is introduced to the Arkham universe. But I always found it so interesting that people were always saying, after the game came out, and obviously after everybody already found out, everybody kept saying like, oh, well, I knew it was Jason. It was so obvious and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking like, I was watching all of these YouTube videos. I was reading all of these comments. You didn't know for sure that it was Jason Todd. Like, Jason Todd was one of the names being bandied about, but there were quite a few others. I personally thought it was probably either Jason or Hush, but I didn't know for sure. And it's one of those things where, they put all of these pieces in the game or in the story, and you don't really see them for what they are when you're watching it for the first time. But then, in hindsight, with the knowledge that you have after, seeing the truth, then it does look obvious, like, oh, well, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I put that together? And it's like, because you weren't meant to put that together the first time around. That's the beauty of storytelling, where you can litter all of these crumbs throughout a story and connect them without the reader even seeing it until the right moment. And so I just, kind of thought it was interesting, kind of like Mysterio is the bad guy in Far From Home. Mm-hmm. Jason Todd ends up being the bad guy, even though nobody kind of sees it coming. At least nobody knows for sure it was coming until he finally took his helmet off and revealed that's who he is. So I just, that is kind of one of the things that I've kind of found amusing is everybody denying that, oh yeah, I totally knew it was Jason the whole time, 100%, absolutely no doubts. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sure, Jan. Sure. So yeah, that's my little gaming corner rant for the episode.
So I wanted to talk a little bit then too, as far as Spider-Man and Tom Holland. We've all seen the Umbrella video where he dances and makes us all gush and excited about his dance moves, to say the very least. And I thought it was interesting that there was an article I read about how he would be open to playing Spider-Man as I think honestly the interviewer was asking him about like his looking for like a homophobic comment or seeing if he would on the cuff say something that they could twist around and make into an article that would turn heads. And he said that he'd be open to playing Peter Parker as a gay guy or whatever they wanted. He said the MCU is doing a whole lot of things. They're bringing in a whole lot of people to play a whole lot of different characters, and I'm excited to see where that's going. And what really struck me that I thought was really cool is he said that the world is not just made up of straight white guys, and so it would be unrealistic to expect that going forward. And that's really cool. They actually had an actor that is a transgender character, and unfortunately I didn't notice very much about this particular actor except that he's like super young and he's from Chicago, but he was really stoked to be in it, and they don't necessarily like point it out or make it a thing during the movie. Like it's not something that they have to say, which I think is kind of like really cool that they were able to do that for it to be in there, but not for it to have been made a thing during the movie, because that's really what we should be doing as a society, is understanding that this is where we are and what we're moving towards in a good way, Oh
yeah, so I love it. Obviously as a non-cis het person, like, it's obviously, I've gone through all these years seeing just cis het people and cis het characters portrayed. Sure. And so, like, whenever I see a character who is not cis het in some way, it just, it really gets me, like, I love to see that. It touches a part of me where it's just like, that's like me, and it's so interesting because people who don't get to experience that, they don't understand the importance of that, of being able to see a character like that. I don't want to say an alternate lifestyle, but the portrayal of different kinds of people is what's really important. We're used to this comic book cookie cutter, these different people. I mean, I would love to see a full figured, a bigger woman who is out there kicking butt and taking names. I mean, that would be amazing. But it's also, on us to understand that you can, we talk about cosplay sometimes in this podcast, and we say, cosplay is for every figure, every person, but it would be cool to see someone portrayed, even like not sexually, as someone who can be bigger and strong. And I would love for us to be going in that direction, and in those different interpretations and portrayals in movies and television going forward. That would be really cool. Yeah, because, geeks of all races, all identities, I mean, we love the characters that we love, but we still deserve to see people like us portrayed in the media that we consume. Sure. I agree completely. So let's talk a little bit about the ending of the movie. I don't want to give away too much for you. I know you don't mind, but I've given away quite a bit already. Obviously, Spider-Man figures out what to do with Mysterio. There are a couple of sequences where Mysterio's ability to use the projectors to manipulate what Spider-Man sees is crazy. It was like nightmare type stuff. Like, I was having anxiety, like, for him during the sequence. He, like, manipulates what he sees and what's around him,
and what he he's in like a concrete industrial building, but what he's seeing is like almost like a SHIELD headquarters where Nick Fury would have been, and like debriefing them on stuff, and he ends up being like really cornered and almost like killed because of this manipulation that Mysterio inflicts on him. And it's like really, like, I was really feeling for him. I was really scared and really upset. And then there's this thing that they keep making jokes about throughout the entire movie called the Peter Tingle. And that's like the point. It's supposed to be really silly. Like, it's like, stop calling it the Peter Tingle. It's not.
Yeah.
We need to stop calling it that.
Yeah.
But it's, it's the Spidey sense. It's close your eyes and you can feel your surroundings differently. Like that's, and he actually goes through 1 or 2 upgrades on the suit too, because he has the technology available to him through Happy from Stark Industries. So he, creates a new suit for himself, and it's a really cute little moment where he makes a lot of movements with the tech, just like Tony did. So it was really cute. Like, it was a very, very nice little, like homage. It was really, I loved it.
Yeah.
So eventually, Peter uses this Peter Tingle to defeat the, what Mysterio is inflicting on him. He goes and he obviously finds the source, and he's able to get tossed around a lot and do what he needs to do. But then Mysterio, he must have recorded this thing at the very end of the movie before he dies, and he lies to like the entire public. Like, he puts out a social media video that says, "I can't believe it, Spider-Man has been he makes it out so that Spider-Man's the bad guy."
Yeah.
And then he says Spider-Man's name, and says Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. And everybody hears it, and that's how the movie ends.
Oh.
I am not kidding. It is horrifying. I read an article where it said that, they end the movie and they put the MCU in a really dark place right at that point. Like, holy cannoli. Yeah, they do. And I was arguing with Aurelia because she's like, they did not put it in a dark place. And I was like, yeah, they did. Like, come on.
Yeah, because, shaming a hero and making them out to be the villain is pretty par for the course for a lot of storylines. But to actually name him is like, wow. Like, I can only think of one. I mean, there might be others, but Peter Parker's always, in the comics, been very protective of his identity. And I can only think of one time where his identity was actually exposed, and he did it willingly, and that was in the Civil War storyline where he was joining the registration side, and so he held a press conference and willingly took off his mask and revealed who he was. And that was a huge deal that he did that, because he's just been so protective of both his identity and his friends and his family for so many years, and to finally cross that point where he just takes it off was momentous. So, I'm kind of curious where they're going to go with that now, where now everybody kind of knows. Because, I mean, how else is he going to deny it?
Right. Well, and that's one of the things, too, that I'm wondering, because there's all this speculation as to how they're going to get the powered people, the mutants, the Defender. People know who Jessica Jones and Luke Cage are.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know Iron Fist or the Punisher.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they do. They know his name in the media. So yeah, I feel like all of it. Daredevil, I think, is still under wraps. But there might have been. It's hard to know what anyone's doing because Netflix canceled all the shows, so that to give them back. But I'm so concerned as to how they're going to do it. It's a really cool segue to be fair.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man would be, or Peter Parker would be someone that does defend for good, and
I mean, we did talk about this a little bit, in an earlier episode, where the whole superhero secret identity is kind of becoming obsolete in this day and age of technology.
Right. Yes, exactly. And that's what I think is so cool too, is like, it's interesting to see where they're going to take it, especially with someone who doesn't necessarily break the law, but helps out and helps out in a big way, versus someone who does break the law in order to help out. There's a lot of that going on in Jessica Jones, which I'm watching right now. So there's, it's hard to really differentiate between doing good and doing what's right. And it's really cool. Like, a
lot of moral questions going on.
Yes, exactly. I just love it. It's so much fun. So that's really where it ends, and we don't really know a whole lot about the next phase or what's going to happen. We've seen all that speculation that last week we talked about Keanu Reeves, and I forgot to mention that they had been in talks to have him come into the MCU, but they are just trying to come up with a good role for him. I'm a little sad that Jake Gyllenhaal's going to, unless Mysterio shows up again as a projection or something like that, because he portrayed Mysterio so well. Like, he was such a cool villain, bad guy, good guy, that I was like, oh, this is really cool. I was kind of hoping that he'd be around for a bit, but he played a really convincing bad guy too. Like, that was great. But even like with Keanu Reeves, there's talks about him being Adam Warlock. There's talks about him. He had always made jokes about wanting to be Wolverine, but obviously I don't know that would be something that they would change out, as opposed to really try and get Hugh Jackman to just kind of do a cameo or two. I don't know. I feel like you just can't do it. Like, Hugh Jackman is Hugh Jackman. Anyway,
my vote personally is for Moon Knight, because Moon Knight is awesome and more people need to know about him.
Right, absolutely. So that's really all I wanted to talk about as far as Spider-Man Far From Home.
Well, I mean, as far as like the movie sounds like, I mean, it sounds like they tried to kind of clean up a little bit from the whole mess of Infinity War and Endgame. But otherwise, I mean, it sounds pretty much like a fairly typical Spider-Man movie that we can come to expect from the MCU, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and that's just it, too. Is like, I want to go back and watch the movies again and see Tom Holland's transition into Peter Parker, because I remember talking about how I didn't really like him very much to begin with. I thought he was just like a cocky New Jersey kid. So I'm excited to go back and change my opinions on that, to say the very least. So I probably will do that, and I still need to see Into the Spider-Verse and kind of like get myself caught up, and I'm hoping that the MCU makes a good transition into slapping the Marvel label on the X-Men movies, and really they can do so much now, and they've got the world at their feet with this. So I'm just hoping that they do it right. I'm really hoping that they do it right. Like, for a lot of the movie, I was wondering, I wonder if Stan Lee would have liked this. Like, I wonder, because Spider-Man is his baby. So I just, I really wanted to, it would be cool to know, just like anyone who ever has passed away, you always want their recognition, their affirmation. So I'm sure that he would be. These are his, he was so entertained by everything that they were doing. It was hard to not have a cameo. I can imagine. That was real difficult. I don't know. I don't know what I was hoping for or what they could have possibly done. I'm glad that they didn't, but I'm also like, it's definitely a changing of the guards.
I had heard the suggestion that Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool should do the Stan Lee cameo, but he should do it as Deadpool going as Stan Lee. So obviously he would have the mask and everything still on, but then like have the mustache and like the rest of his costume. Oh, like he did with
the Bob Ross thing?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, and maybe it's too soon. You know what I mean?
So for Periodically Scientific today, Elisabeth actually shared this really cool article with me about a Beluga Narwhal hybrid, which is super cool to think about because, first of all, narwhals are really cool animals. My daughter loves unicorns, and she calls them unicorns of the sea, or a sea unicorn, so it's super cute. Anyways, so narwhals are cool because they have a tusk. It's actually like a tooth. It's not a horn like a rhinoceros has. It's a tusk like an elephant. So it's an extra tooth, which is interesting because it comes out like the middle of their face. But anyways, beluga whales are my favorite whales because they're adorable. I just love their pudgy little heads. But so this article that Elisabeth shared with me is about an Inuit man in West Greenland. About 30 years ago, he was hunting for some whales. He shot 3 strange whales with front fins like belugas and tails like narwhals. And he was so confused about this that he saved one of the skulls and hung it outside his shed. So this was 30 years ago. A few years later, a scientist that was in the area noticed that skull and ended up taking it with him, I'm assuming with permission, I would hope, to the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And since it was a really strange specimen, larger than the skull from a beluga whale or from a narwhal whale, but it had teeth that looked somehow like a mishmash of the two. So the hunter did an interview through a translator describing the animals' bodies and their odd teeth that he could even see like from his boat while he was hunting them. And researchers thought that the whale might have been the offspring of a beluga and a narwhal, but they couldn't prove it at that time because this was, 25, 30 years ago. But now they can prove it. So that's super cool. I love how when science does things where like they have guesses about how things worked, and then the technology progresses and they're able to prove or even disprove theories that they have about things. It's great. I love it. So what they were able to do is they took the specimen. Nobody's ever heard about anything like this before or since. It's okay. So the skull itself doesn't have the tusk of a narwhal. So that's how we know it's not actually a narwhal. But it also doesn't have quite the right shape for a beluga skull either. The teeth look a little more like beluga teeth, but they're a little pointier. They kind of come out the bottom of the jaw like shovels. Beluga teeth grow like straight up and down like our teeth would, kind of. So based on the anatomy alone, it's really hard to actually specify and tell. But what they actually did is they took DNA from bone. And so there was a researcher, her name is Eileen Lorenzen, is this scientist, and she is an expert at retrieving old DNA from bone, which is really hard because, first of all, bone cells are super hard. And second of all, if there's any marrow left inside of a bone, that's going to be really, really hard to get out and reconstitute into something usable. There's not going to be much she can get out of there. But she did it. So she and her colleagues tried a genetic approach, and they drilled into the creature's teeth and got a sample. It was not very great. It was kind of degraded. But she said it was still enough that they could sequence, which is super cool. By the way, this is an article from livescience.com or livescience.com. So I find a lot of cool stuff there. So if you're ever looking for some cool nerdy science to look up, live or livescience.com. All right, so here's what it was. The results came out really, really clearly. Even though the sample wasn't super great, the results that they got was actually a male 50-50, almost near 50-50 genetic mix of beluga and narwhal. So it indicated that it was a first generation hybrid. So this was like a narwhal and a beluga had a baby, and it was this skull was the first generation. To find out which species was the parent, the researchers looked at the animal's mitochondrial DNA, and those DNA are in the powerhouse of the cell. You remember the Schoolhouse Rock, or maybe it was maybe it was the Magic School Bus thing. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? And so that DNA is only passed along through the mother. And so the mitochondrial DNA was all narwhal, meaning that the mother of this whale was a narwhal and the father was a beluga. But they didn't stop there either. The next thing that they did was they extracted the carbon and nitrogen from the skull's collagen content. And then they went through and looked at different isotopes of carbon and nitrogen and figured out those things are incorporated into the body from the animal's diet. So those different isotopes figured out kind of how the animal ate. And those isotopes revealed a very different pattern than what I saw in belugas normally, where they hunt at about 1,640 feet deep. Narwhals dive much deeper at 2,625 feet deep or so. So it's interesting. They can use the carbon signature, which is a lot like that of a walrus or a bearded seal. Both of those forage at the bottom of the sea. So this hybrid whale kind of did a similar thing. And it's interesting because that makes their teeth make sense. I said earlier, their teeth were kind of like shovelly. They were, instead of pointing upward like our teeth do to chomp down on things, their teeth were more flattened outward, and they scoop up things with their teeth. So that's pretty interesting. We don't know whether or not this hybrid animal would be able to parent other offspring of its own. It was an adult when it died, but not much is known about the other two possible hybrids that accompanied this one. The Inuit hunter shot this one. One sank after being shot, and the other was brought in, but its skull was left near the shore and eventually washed away. We don't know if the other two were male or female. We only know the one that he kept the skull from. He was the male. And so we don't know if this male was able to father children or not. But it's possible, I guess. We just know that he was a first generation due to the DNA split, which is really cool that they can actually sequence DNA from 30 years ago from a dead skull. I mean, holy cow. That's pretty awesome. It is impossible to say, though, whether the three whales in the mid-1980s from 30 years ago are the only hybrids. It's not very common, probably, but it's possible that there could be other hybrids out there between other whale species as well. No other whale researchers have even seen a hybrid like this beluga/narwhal whale, and genetic data on narwhals and belugas suggests that the species are kind of related back in their ancestry as well. So it is possible, since they have compatible DNA, that there's other whale species that have compatible DNA too. Maybe someone's going to hear about this study later, and maybe we'll find out more about more hybrids later on that other people have found. Who knows? I just think it's really cool because it's like two of the coolest whales out there. I mean, I'm sure there's other cool whales. I'm sure you guys might have cool whales that you like that are not belugas or narwhals, but I just think belugas are adorable. So that's cool. The picture, there's a couple of pictures that an artist rendered kind of based on the Inuit's description of them, the hunter's description, and it looks much like a beluga whale, especially in the head and front fin area. And then toward the back, it lengthens a lot more than a beluga whale would and looks long like a narwhal does. And like I said, they don't have that long tusk like narwhals do, which I was kind of, when I first saw the picture, I was a little bummed. I was hoping for a narwhal tusk, but but they're kind of cute. They have weird teeth, but they are kind of cute because they have that bulbous head like the beluga, which makes me think belugas are adorable. So anyways, that's periodically scientific for this week. So hope you enjoyed.
So with all of that being said, I hope that you guys get the opportunity to go see the movie and let us know what you thought about it. Let me know and Elizabeth know what you think the transition's going to be, what they're going to do. I know that we can all go on Wikipedia and look up, what they're going to do with the next phase of the MCU, but it's always fun. And with all the distractions and deterrents that they give to us, it's always fun to speculate what they do and then for it to be completely thrown off and something else completely different happen. If you stayed and you watched the final scene, you do know that they did another misdirection where Nick Fury is actually chilling out with the Skrulls, and all that we saw were those two guys from Captain Marvel hanging out and working with Peter Parker and Mysterio. So it kind of like solidifies everything in the end, where Mysterio was actually was able to dupe the Skrulls and not Nick Fury. So maybe we're even kind of hoping Nick Fury wouldn't have been duped by that. I don't know. We'll see. That's it that we have for the show. Thanks so much for getting nerdy with us. Give us some feedback. Let us know if you liked the show, if you didn't like the show. Contact us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and tell your friends to listen to us too, because we love to hear from you and we'd love for you to hear from us. Thanks for getting nerdy with us. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Elisabeth.
And thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.